Number 20. Shannon Guess Richardson. At number 20 in this countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Shannon Guess Richardson, a former actress whose case shocked the nation because of how close it came to the highest levels of American power. Born on August 31, 1977, Richardson became nationally known not for her brief television roles but for mailing rice-and-lace letters to the President of the United States, the Mayor of New York City, and the head of a prominent gun control organization in May of 2013. The crime immediately triggered a federal emergency, drawing the attention of multiple intelligence and law enforcement agencies. At the time the letters were sent, Richardson was living in Texas and was married to Nathan Richardson. In a move that deepened the severity of her actions, she attempted to frame her husband for the crime by contacting federal authorities and falsely accusing him of responsibility. Investigators soon determined that the claims did not add up. As the case unfolded, evidence began pointing back to Richardson herself, turning what initially appeared to be an external threat into a disturbing case of deception from within the home. Richardson was arrested on June 7, 2013, in Mount Pleasant, Texas. A search of her residence in New Boston uncovered traces of ricin, castor beans, and materials consistent with toxin production. Federal investigators also relied on advanced mail tracking technology operated by the United States Postal Service, which helped narrow the origin of the threatening letters. Within weeks, a federal grand jury indicted Richardson on multiple serious charges, including threatening the president, mailing threatening communications, and possession of a biological toxin. Facing overwhelming evidence, Richardson entered into a plea agreement later that year. On December 10, 2013, she pleaded guilty to a single count of possessing a toxin for use as a weapon. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to dismiss the remaining charges, including those related to presidential threats. The plea spared her a lengthy trial but did not shield her from a substantial federal sentence. On July 16, 2014, Richardson was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, the equivalent of 216 months. The court also ordered her to pay more than $367,000 in restitution and imposed 5 years of supervised release following incarceration. Additionally, she was required to undergo psychological treatment while in custody and to continue treatment after her eventual release. The sentence reflected the court's view that her actions posed a serious threat to public safety, regardless of whether the poison ultimately harmed anyone. Richardson is currently incarcerated at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, a facility that houses female federal inmates with medical and mental health needs. Her projected release date is November 18, 2028. Before her conviction, Richardson had appeared in young individual roles on television series such as The Walking Dead, The Vampire Diaries, and Franklin and Bash, as well as the film The Blind Side. She was a mother of 6 and had been married multiple times. Today, her name is firmly linked to one of the most alarming federal cases involving biological threats in recent history. At number 19 in this countdown is Angela Jane Johnson, a Forest City, Iowa native whose name became permanently linked to one of the most chilling domestic murder cases in modern American history. Johnson's conviction marked a grim chapter in U.S. federal law, as she was the first woman sentenced to death by a federal jury since 1953, before her sentence was later commuted to life. Her story is one of manipulation, complicity, and the dark intersections of love and criminal enterprise. Born on January 17, 1964, Johnson endured a childhood marked by trauma. She was raised by deeply religious grandparents who subjected her to extreme and sometimes abusive exorcism rituals, while her mother struggled with alcoholism and neglect. As a young woman, Johnson became involved with Dustin Honken, a rising illegal substance trafficker, and became pregnant with his child. Their relationship would later draw her into a string of murders tied to Honken's hard substance empire. In 1993, Johnson became a central figure in a series of murders in Cerro Gordo County, Iowa. The victims included two former illegal substance dealers, Greg Nicholson and Terry DeGius, along with Nicholson's girlfriend Lori Ann Duncan and her two young daughters, 10-year-old Candace and 6-year-old Amber Duncan. Authorities later determined that Johnson helped facilitate these murders, luring victims and assisting in planning their deaths, all to protect Honken's growing substance operation and prevent potential informants from testifying. Johnson's involvement began with calculated manipulation. She posed as a lost salesperson to gain access to Nicholson's home, and using her relationship with DeGius, secured his trust. Johnson also procured a pistol for the murders and actively aided in the logistics of moving the victims to secluded locations. Prosecutors argued that she acted knowingly and intentionally, demonstrating that she was more than a passive accomplice, but an active participant in one of the federal government's most notorious domestic murder cases. After years of investigation, Johnson was arrested in July 2000. Her capture came after providing a map and written notes to a fellow inmate, Robert McNeese, which led authorities to recover the victim's remains. McNeese, serving a life sentence at the time, secretly recorded Johnson's confessions and gave investigators the information that tied her directly to the murders. Johnson's cooperation with Honken and her careful orchestration of the crimes made her case one of the most closely watched federal murder trials of the early 21st century. In June 2005, Johnson's trial culminated in a federal jury condemning her to death for her role in the murders. The jury highlighted her participation in the demise of children and her lack of remorse. Her defense emphasized a history of manipulation by Honken and a traumatic upbringing, arguing that she had not fully understood the consequences of her actions. Nevertheless, the jury's decision led to a December 19, 2005 death sentence, making her the first woman federally sentenced to death in more than 50 years. However, in March 2012, U.S. District Judge Mark W. Bennett vacated Johnson's death sentence, citing her defense team's failure to present critical mitigating evidence regarding her mental state. Judge Bennett described the defense as alarmingly dysfunctional. Following years of legal review, Johnson was resentenced in December 2014 to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. She is currently serving her sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution, Aliceville, in Alabama, where she remains under strict federal supervision. At number 18 in this countdown is Stella Maudine Nickell, a Washington state woman whose name became synonymous with fear, consumer paranoia, and a crime that changed how America views everyday medication. Unlike crimes committed in shadows or remote locations, Nickell's case unfolded in medicine cabinets and grocery store aisles. What began as a quiet domestic death in 1986 would soon expose one of the most disturbing product tampering cases in American history. Stella Nickell was born on August 7, 1943, in Colton, Oregon. Her early life was marked by poverty and instability, and by adulthood she had already accumulated a troubling criminal history, including convictions for fraud and forgery. In 1976, she married Bruce Nickell, a heavy equipment operator who struggled with alcoholism. Over time, Bruce sought sobriety, a shift that reportedly created tension in the marriage. Stella worked as a security screener at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and developed a hobby of maintaining a home aquarium, a detail that would later become a critical piece of federal evidence. On June 5, 1986, Bruce Nickell returned home complaining of a headache. According to Stella, he took several extra-strength Excedrin capsules from a bottle in their home and collapsed within minutes. He was rushed to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, where doctors were unable to revive him. His death was initially ruled natural, attributed to emphysema. Less than 1 week later, on June 11th, 40-year-old bank manager Sue Snow collapsed after taking Excedrin from a bottle purchased at a local store. She, too, was pronounced dead at Harborview. This second death triggered alarm bells. During Sue Snow's autopsy, the medical examiner detected the distinct scent of bitter almonds, a classic indicator of cyanide poisoning. Laboratory tests confirmed lethal cyanide levels in her system. Investigators traced the poison to the Excedrin capsules themselves. Soon, 3 additional cyanide-laced capsules were found in the same bottle. Public fear escalated rapidly. Illegal substance manufacturers initiated massive recalls, and Washington state temporarily banned capsule-form medications. The case immediately drew comparisons to the unsolved Chicago Tylenol murders from 1982. Stella Nickell entered the investigation voluntarily, telling police her husband had died after ingesting Excedrin from a bottle with the same lot number. Testing confirmed cyanide in Bruce Nickell's remains and in 2 bottles Stella provided. However, suspicion quickly centered on her. Out of only 5 contaminated bottles discovered nationwide, Nickell had possessed 2. Investigators also uncovered that she had taken out multiple life insurance policies on her husband, including an accidental demise rider that significantly increased the payout if his demise was ruled an accident. The investigation took a decisive turn when forensic analysts found traces of green aquarium algicide mixed with the cyanide inside the capsules. Records showed Nickell had purchased the same algicide for her fish tank. While direct proof of cyanide purchase was lacking, additional evidence mounted. Library records revealed Nickell had researched poisons extensively, checking out books on toxic substances. Her fingerprints were found on pages discussing cyanide. The most damaging blow came when her daughter, Cynthia Hamilton, testified that her mother had previously attempted to poison Bruce and had openly discussed murdering him for insurance money. In December 1987, a federal grand jury indicted Stella Nickell on 5 counts of product tampering, including 2 counts resulting in death. Her trial began in April 1988. Prosecutors argued that she poisoned her husband for financial gain, then deliberately placed additional tainted bottles on store shelves to disguise the murder as random. The jury agreed. In May 1988, Nickell was convicted on all counts, becoming the first person sentenced under the Federal Anti-Tampering Act enacted after the Tylenol scare. Nickell received 2 concurrent 90-year federal sentences for the death of Bruce Nickell and Sue Snow, along with 3 concurrent 10-year sentences for additional tampering charges. All sentences were ordered to run concurrently. Over the decades, she filed multiple appeals and petitions, consistently maintaining her innocence until a 2022 compassionate release request in which she expressed remorse. That request was denied. As of late 2024, Stella Nickell remains incarcerated at Federal Correctional Institution Hazleton in West Virginia. Her projected release date is March 7, 2043, when she would be 99 years old. At number 17 on this list is Aafia Siddiqui, a case that has drawn international attention for more than 2 decades. Her story sits at the intersection of national security, geopolitics, and criminal justice, making it one of the most debated federal cases involving a woman in United States custody. Siddiqui is currently serving an 86-year federal sentence, a punishment so severe that it effectively amounts to a life term behind bars. Aafia Siddiqui was born on March 2, 1972 in Karachi, Pakistan. She was raised in an educated household and later moved to the United States, where she built an academic record that stood out. Siddiqui earned a bachelor's degree in biology from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and later completed a doctorate in neuroscience at Brandeis University. For years, her life appeared defined by education and family, not crime, making the events that followed both shocking and difficult for many to reconcile. Following the September 11 attacks, Siddiqui's movements and associations drew the attention of U.S. authorities. By the early 2000s, she had been placed on the FBI's terrorism-related radar, becoming the first woman ever listed on the Bureau's Seeking Information Terrorism Notice. In March 2003, she disappeared along with her children, vanishing from public view for several years. What happened during this period remains deeply contested, with sharply conflicting accounts from U.S. officials, Siddiqui herself, and her supporters. In July 2008, Siddiqui resurfaced in Ghazni, Afghanistan, where she was detained by Afghan police. According to U.S. prosecutors, documents found in her possession included handwritten notes describing attacks on American landmarks and instructions related to weapons and explosives. The most serious incident occurred while she was being questioned at a police compound. Federal authorities allege that Siddiqui seized a rifle and fired at U.S. personnel. She was shot during the struggle, seriously injured, and later transferred to American custody. Later that year, Siddiqui was extradited to the United States and charged in federal court in New York. Notably, she was not convicted of terrorism-related crimes, but instead faced charges tied to assault and attempted murder of U.S. officers. In February 2010, a federal jury found her guilty on all counts. The verdict marked a decisive turning point in the case, closing years of uncertainty about whether she would ever face trial in the United States. At sentencing, the federal judge imposed an 86-year prison term, citing the seriousness of the offense and the danger posed to government personnel. Siddiqui was also given a period of supervised release to follow her incarceration, though the length of her sentence means release is unlikely in her lifetime. She is currently incarcerated at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, a federal prison that houses inmates requiring specialized medical or mental health care. From the moment of her conviction, Siddiqui's case became a global flashpoint. In Pakistan, she is widely viewed as a symbol of injustice, with many believing she was wrongfully convicted or mistreated while in custody. Protests calling for her release have occurred repeatedly, and Pakistani political leaders across party lines have publicly demanded her repatriation. In contrast, U.S. officials have consistently maintained that the trial was fair and that the sentence reflects the gravity of the crime. At number 16, in this countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Heather Lois Mack, a Chicago native whose case crossed international borders and ultimately ended in a United States federal courtroom. Her name became globally known because of the stark brutality of the crime on the calculated steps that followed. What began as a luxury vacation in Bali in August 2014 would spiral into one of the most infamous parent-child cases of the modern era, ending with Mack serving decades inside a federal women's prison. Heather Mack was born on October 11, 1995, to jazz composer James L. Mack and socialite Sheila Ann von Wies. By the time Heather reached adolescence, the relationship between mother and daughter had become deeply volatile. Police were reportedly called to their Illinois home dozens of times over nearly a decade for domestic disputes involving theft, physical altercations, and threats. Heather attended Oak Park and River Forest High School, where she began a relationship with Tommy Shafe, a young man her mother strongly opposed. That conflict intensified when Heather became pregnant, a development that further strained an already fractured household. In early August 2014, Sheila Mack booked a trip to Bali, Indonesia, taking her daughter with her. They stayed at the Street Regis Hotel in Nusa Dua, arriving in luxury accommodations. Unknown to Sheila, Heather had secretly used her mother's credit card to fly Tommy Shafe to Bali as well. Surveillance footage later showed Sheila arguing with Shafe inside the hotel shortly before the murder. On the night of August 7, 2014, Sheila Mack was struck repeatedly inside the hotel room and died from blunt force trauma. What followed was not a crime of panic, but of concealment. Heather Mack and Tommy Shafe placed Sheila's body inside a suitcase and attempted to remove it from the hotel grounds using a taxi. Blood leaking from the luggage alerted hotel staff, who directed the driver to a police station. Indonesian authorities opened the suitcase and discovered the body. Mack and Shafe were arrested shortly thereafter at a nearby motel. Both initially claimed that Sheila had been murdered during a robbery, a story investigators quickly dismantled. The case moved swiftly through the Indonesian legal system. Mack admitted to helping conceal the body, while Shafe confessed to carrying out the murder. Both were charged with premeditated murder, a charge that carried the possibility of execution under Indonesian law. In April 2015, Indonesian judges sentenced Heather Mack to 10 years in prison, citing her pregnancy as a mitigating factor. Shafe received an 18-year sentence. Mack served approximately 7 years in an Indonesian prison, receiving sentence reductions for good behavior and national holidays. In October 2021, Heather Mack was released from prison and immediately deported to the United States. Upon landing in Chicago, she was taken into federal custody. United States prosecutors charged her with conspiracy to murder a U.S. national and obstruction of justice, arguing that planning, financial arrangements, and communications related to the murder had occurred on American soil. In June 2023, Mack pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy to murder a U.S. national, avoiding a full federal trial. On January 18, 2024, a federal judge sentenced Heather Mack to 26 years in prison. The court credited time already served, but made clear that the sentence reflected the seriousness of her role in orchestrating the crime. She was transferred to Federal Correctional Institution Hazleton, also known as SFF Hazleton, a women's federal prison in West Virginia. Her projected release date extends well into the mid-21st century. At number 15 in our countdown is Erin J. Sharma, a former federal corrections officer whose fall from authority ended with one of the most severe punishments ever imposed on a Bureau of Prisons employee. This is not a story about a crime committed in secret, but one that unfolded inside the walls of a maximum security federal prison. Sharma, born April 24, 1976, was raised as the daughter of an Army soldier, moving frequently throughout her childhood. She graduated high school a year early and began working as a corrections officer in 1997. By the time she married fellow officer Rajesh Roger Sharma in 1999, she had already built a career inside the federal prison system. The couple eventually relocated to Florida, where Sharma worked at the maximum security unit of the Coleman Federal Correctional Complex near Coleman. To colleagues and inmates alike, she developed a reputation for strict control, favoritism, and hostility toward inmates labeled as informants. The chain of events that led to Richard Delano's death began on February 3, 2005. Delano, a convicted fentanyl dealer, reached through the food slot of his cell and grabbed Sharma's arm, leaving a visible bruise. The injury was young individual, but witnesses later testified that Sharma's reaction was anything but. According to court testimony, she told Delano, "You are a gone man." Though she received basic medical treatment and was sent home for the day, prosecutors later argued that this moment marked the beginning of a calculated plan for retaliation rather than a passing emotional response. Less than a month later, on March 1st, Delano was transferred into a cell with John Javilo McCullough, an inmate known throughout the prison as extremely violent. McCullough had previously assaulted every cellmate he had been assigned and had been kept on special single-cell status for that reason. Federal prosecutors presented evidence that Sharma, along with her supervisor, arranged the cell transfer fully aware that Delano was considered a snitch and that McCullough posed an obvious and extreme danger. Witnesses testified that Sharma had encouraged McCullough to attack Delano and even suggested that it happened while she was not on duty, insulating herself from immediate suspicion. On March 4th, while Erin Sharma was on a 3-day vacation, Delano was brutally beaten inside the shared cell. The assault left him in a coma. 13 days later, he died from his injuries. Federal investigators concluded that the attack was not random prison violence, but the predictable outcome of a deliberate decision made by officers entrusted with inmate safety. Sharma was charged with violating Delano's civil rights under color of law and with conspiring to subject him to cruel and unusual punishment, crimes that federal law treats with the utmost seriousness. At trial in federal court in Orlando, prosecutors described the cell assignment as putting a sheep in a cage with a wolf. They portrayed Sharma as the driving force behind the scheme, calling her the puppet master who used McCullough as the instrument of violence. FBI testimony revealed that Sharma had acknowledged knowing both Delano's status as an informant and McCullough's violent history, admitting that an assault was inevitable. Although Sharma denied these statements on the witness stand and claimed her threats were jokes, the jury was unconvinced. On July 29, 2009, Erin Sharma was found guilty on both felony counts. At sentencing on October 26, Senior U.S. District Judge Patricia Fawcett imposed a life sentence in federal prison, a rare and severe punishment for a former corrections officer. At number 14 in our countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Caden Elizabeth Gilbert, a young woman whose actions led to a fatal outcome on tribal land and placed her case squarely under federal jurisdiction. Caden Elizabeth Gilbert was 22 years old and living in rural Michigan when the events of November 2020 unfolded. On that night, Gilbert went to the Mount Pleasant residence of Nagonspa Massey, a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay bands of Odawa Indians. The home was located on the Isabella Indian Reservation, land recognized as Indian country under federal law. What happened inside that residence would later be described in court as deliberate and reckless. Gilbert stabbed Massey in the thigh with a knife, severing her femoral artery. The wound caused catastrophic blood loss. Despite efforts to save her, Nagonspa Massey died from the injury. The location of the crime immediately shaped how the case would be handled. Because the murder occurred on tribal land and the victim was Native American, while Gilbert was not, the case fell under federal jurisdiction. This meant the investigation and prosecution would not remain solely at the local level. The Mount Pleasant Police Department responded first, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation soon joined the case. From the outset, federal authorities treated the murder as a serious, violent offense subject to the harshest scrutiny under United States law. As investigators pieced together what happened, prosecutors concluded that the stabbing was intentional and carried out with malice aforethought. Although a specific motive was never publicly released, court filings established that Gilbert sought out Massey and carried out the attack in her home. Under federal law, the facts supported a potential charge of first-degree premeditated murder, a charge that could have exposed Gilbert to the most extreme penalties available. Instead, a plea agreement was reached that reshaped the legal path forward. In November 2021, Caden Elizabeth Gilbert pleaded guilty in federal court to second-degree murder. By accepting responsibility, she avoided a first-degree murder charge and the possibility of the federal demise penalty. In the plea agreement, Gilbert admitted that her actions were wanton and that she stabbed Massey with malice aforethought. The case then moved toward sentencing in the Eastern District of Michigan, where the focus shifted from guilt to punishment. On April 14, 2022, U.S. District Judge Thomas L. Ludington sentenced Gilbert in federal court in Bay City, Michigan. After reviewing the facts, hearing arguments from both sides, and listening to powerful victim impact statements, the judge imposed a sentence of 250 months in federal prison. That sentence amounts to more than 20 years behind bars, followed by 5 years of supervised release once her term of incarceration is complete. During the sentencing hearing, Nagahonsba Massey's mother addressed the court, describing her daughter's life, her hopes, and the devastating loss her family continues to endure. She spoke of the night her daughter fought to survive and the moment she realized that fight was over. Members of the Anishinaabe community filled the courtroom, wearing red shirts and ribbon skirts, a visible reminder that the case extended far beyond one defendant and one victim. At number 13 in our countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Chelsea Perkins, a former U.S. 8 Coast Guard veteran whose case unfolded across multiple states and ended with a fatal gunshot in a national park. This is a story that prosecutors described as cold and calculated, one driven by resentment, planning, and a final decision that turned a remote hiking trail into a crime scene. Chelsea Perkins was 35 years old and living in Alexandria, Virginia, when she decided to travel more than 300 miles to Ohio in early March 2021. The purpose of the trip was to meet Matthew Dunmeyer, a 31-year-old aspiring musician she had known previously. The two had reconnected online, and Dunmeyer told co-workers he was meeting a woman who had just arrived in the area. What he did not know was that Perkins had brought a firearm with her from Virginia, nor that the meeting would be the last day of his life. After picking Dunmeyer up, Perkins rented an Airbnb where the two spent the night. The following morning, March 6, 2021, she drove him to Cuyahoga Valley National Park, a federally protected area in Ohio. According to prosecutors, they hiked past marked trails, crossed ravines, and moved deep off-trail into a wooded section of the park. It was there, far from witnesses, that Perkins pulled out a firearm and shot Dunmeyer once in the back of the head, murdering him instantly. She then left his body in the woods and drove away. The crime came to light 3 days later when hikers discovered Dunmeyer's body and notified authorities. Because the murdering occurred on federal land, the case immediately fell under federal jurisdiction. Investigators from the National Park Service were joined by federal agents who quickly began reconstructing Perkins's movements before and after the murdering. Evidence mounted rapidly. GPS data placed her at the scene. Phone and social media records confirmed her communications with Dunmeyer. Surveillance footage tracked her travel, and ballistics evidence would later seal her fate. When federal agents searched Perkins' Virginia residence, they discovered 3 9mm pistols. One of those firearms was found inside a purse containing Perkins' photo identification and later tested positive for her DNA. Ballistics analysis linked that weapon to the bullet that murdered Dunmire. Investigators also uncovered a deleted note on Perkins' cell phone that appeared to be a fake self-hurt message written in Dunmire's voice around the time his body was found, suggesting an attempt to mislead authorities and obscure responsibility. After the murder, Perkins drove north to Michigan, where she obtained a tattoo of a noose on her forearm before returning to Virginia. Prosecutors later cited this detail as evidence of her mindset following the murder. During the investigation, Perkins claimed that her actions were rooted in a long-standing accusation that Dunmire had assaulted her in 2017. That allegation had been investigated years earlier but was never prosecuted due to insufficient evidence. Federal prosecutors emphasized that regardless of that claim, the murdering itself was intentional and unlawful. In late May 2025, Perkins pleaded guilty in federal court to second-degree murder and to using, carrying, and discharging a firearm during a violent crime on federal property. By entering the plea, she avoided the risk of a longer sentence that could have approached 25 years. On September 9, 2025, U.S. District Judge Solomon Oliver Jr. sentenced Chelsea Perkins in the Northern District of Ohio. The court imposed a total sentence of 270 months in federal prison, the equivalent of 22.5 years. In addition to incarceration, Perkins was ordered to serve 5 years of supervised release after completing her prison term and to pay restitution, with the full amount to be determined. At number 12 in this countdown is Sheila Marie Ritze, a California woman whose role in a calculated murder unfolded not on city streets but on open water. Sheila Marie Ritze was 42 years old and living in San Juan Capistrano, California, when the events of October 2019 set her on a permanent collision course with the federal justice system. Ritze owned a boat docked at Dana Point Harbor, a detail that would become central to the crime. According to federal prosecutors, she and Hong Xuan Lei, also known as Wayne or Wangsta, devised a plan to confront Tri James Dow, a 44-year-old man who owed Lei money. The meeting was presented as something harmless, a late-night lobster fishing trip, but it was a deliberate ruse designed to lure Dow into isolation. On the night of October 15, 2019, Ritze, Lei, and Dow boarded Ritze's boat at Dana Point Harbor. Just before midnight, Ritze piloted the vessel out into the Pacific Ocean, placing them squarely within the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States. That jurisdictional detail would later ensure the case was prosecuted federally. Once offshore, the situation turned fatal. Evidence presented at trial showed that Lei shot Dow on the boat. Wounded and disoriented, Dow fell overboard into the dark ocean waters. Instead of attempting to help him, Ritze and Lee turned the boat around and headed back to shore, leaving Dow behind to die. Dow's body was recovered the following day, October 16th, floating several miles northwest of Oceanside. An autopsy conducted by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office revealed that Dow had suffered gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma before drowning. The ruling was homicide. What initially appeared to be a mysterious death at sea quickly drew the attention of federal authorities, including the FBI and the Coast Guard Investigative Service. The investigation would soon focus on Ritze's boat, her movements, and her relationship with both the victim and her co-defendant. When federal investigators questioned Ritze in December 2019, they say she did not tell the truth. Prosecutors later demonstrated that she made multiple false statements, including claiming she had never met Dow before the night of the boat trip. Records and evidence contradicted that claim. In fact, Ritze and Dow had traveled together to Las Vegas just 11 days before the murder. These lies were not treated as young individual inconsistencies. They became a separate federal charge, reflecting what prosecutors argued was a sustained effort to conceal her role in the crime. The case against Ritze went to trial in federal court. After a 12-day trial that concluded in April 2022, a jury found her guilty of second-degree murder within the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States, as well as making false statements to federal investigators. The verdict established that although Ritze did not pull the trigger, she knowingly participated in a plan that resulted in Dow's demise and then attempted to obstruct justice afterward. Her role, prosecutors argued, was essential to the execution of the crime. At her sentencing hearing on April 17, 2023, U.S. District Judge David O. Carter did not soften his words. He described Ritze's conduct as horrific and horrendous, emphasizing the callousness of leaving a wounded man to drown in the ocean. Prosecutors outlined the devastation left behind: a grieving mother, a widow, siblings, and 2 young children who would grow up without their father. They also noted that after the murder, Ritze continued socializing with Lay and even assisted him in tracking Dow's widow using GPS devices. Behavior, they said, underscored her lack of remorse. Judge Carter sentenced Sheila Marie Ritze to 262 months in federal prison, equal to 21 years and 10 months, followed by 5 years of supervised release. She was remanded to the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, where she is currently serving her sentence. Her co-defendant, Hoang Xuan Lei, was convicted separately of first-degree murder and related charges and faces a mandatory life sentence in federal prison, further highlighting the severity of the case and the federal government's response. At number 11 on this list is Brooke Danielle Beckley, a Missouri woman whose case stands out for its level of planning, brutality, and the federal consequences that followed. Beckley was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison without parole for her central role in an illegal substance trafficking conspiracy that escalated into a calculated murder. The crime occurred in Webster County, Missouri, and involved the deliberate murder of Oscar Adan Martinez Gaxiola, a Mexican national. At the time of the offense, Beckley was only 21 years old and living in Nixa, Missouri. Federal investigators later established that she was deeply involved in a large-scale methamphetamine distribution network operating across several Missouri counties, including Greene, Dallas, Webster, and Christian counties. Beckley worked closely with co-conspirators Giovanni Aroldo Mendeville Balderrama and Martinez Gaxiola, supplying hard substance throughout the Springfield area. Prosecutors described her as an active participant who helped move significant quantities of illegal substances and manage financial obligations tied to the operation. The chain of events leading to the slaying began on April 6, 2016, when law enforcement officers seized approximately 1.9 kilograms of methamphetamine from Beckley's hotel room. Along with the illegal substances, officers recovered multiple firearms, ammunition, an illegal substance ledger, and cash. This seizure created a serious financial problem for Beckley. According to court documents, the loss resulted in a $44,000 debt owed to her suppliers, including Martinez Gaxiola. Rather than seeking a lawful way out or cooperating with authorities, Beckley began discussing violent solutions to erase the debt entirely. Federal prosecutors later revealed that Beckley exchanged text messages with Mendeville Balderrama in which they discussed eliminating Martinez Gaxiola as a way to cancel or delay the debt and remove what they perceived as a threat. These conversations made it clear that the plan was deliberate and intentional, not a reaction in the heat of the moment. Beckley went further by recruiting others to help carry out the act, offering money in exchange for their participation. She promised payment to Anthony Edward Donovan, who in turn recruited additional accomplices, including Nathaniel Austin Lee, who allowed the use of his rural property as the location for the attack. On April 24, 2016, the group reportedly practiced using firearms at the same rural property in Webster County where the crime would take place the following day. This rehearsal became a critical piece of evidence, demonstrating advanced planning. On April 25, 2016, Martinez Gaxiola was lured to the property under the false belief that Beckley would repay the debt. When he arrived, he was ambushed and shot multiple times. Witness accounts and forensic evidence showed that dozens of rounds were fired. Martinez Gaxiola was critically injured and later succumbed to his wounds before he could be transported for medical care. Law enforcement responded quickly after neighbors reported gunfire. Although the group attempted to conceal the victim and flee, all co-conspirators were captured by the end of the same day. In June 2017, Beckley pleaded guilty in federal court to conspiracy to distribute hard substance and using a firearm in furtherance of an illegal substance trafficking crime resulting in murder. On February 26, 2018, United States District Judge Roseanne Ketchmark sentenced her to 40 years in federal prison without parole. As of January 2026, Brooke Danielle Beckley remains incarcerated under the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, continuing to serve her 40-year sentence. At number 10 in this countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Gretchen Buselli, a 48-year-old woman from Tallahassee, Florida, became another striking example in the growing list of women sentenced in federal prison after a federal jury found her guilty of orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot against her estranged husband. Following her conviction, Buselli was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, a punishment that underscored the seriousness of using interstate communication systems to attempt to arrange a murdering. Her sentence also included 3 years of supervised release after incarceration. Federal prosecutors established that between June 17, 2021 and September 16, 2021, Buselli used multiple interstate commerce facilities, including the United States Mail, telephone calls, text messages, and an encrypted mobile application, to solicit the murder. The case stemmed from an ongoing custody dispute, during which Buselli claimed her estranged husband was harming their young daughter. Authorities later confirmed that these allegations had been investigated and deemed unfounded by child welfare officials. Buselli initially contacted an acquaintance and attempted to persuade him to carry out the murder. Instead, the acquaintance reported her request to law enforcement, triggering a coordinated federal investigation. Under FBI direction, an undercover agent assumed the role of a hired assassin and continued communication with Buselli. During these exchanges, she provided detailed information about her husband's appearance, daily routines and whereabouts, and negotiated payment terms for the crime. As part of the operation, Buselli agreed to provide an upfront payment of $5,000, followed by an additional sum after the murder was completed. Federal agents observed her delivering the cash at the Cascades Park Amphitheater in Tallahassee. Surveillance later documented her discarding the clothing she wore during the drop-off, an action prosecutors argued showed consciousness of guilt. After the undercover agent falsely informed her that the murder had been carried out, Buselli expressed gratitude, reinforcing the intent behind her actions. When questioned by authorities, Buselli made multiple false statements, denying any involvement in the plot or desire to have her husband murdered. These denials became an additional charge in her case and contributed to the severity of her sentence. During sentencing, federal officials emphasized that the crime was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a sustained and deliberate effort to arrange a murder over several months. Gretchen Buselli is now serving her sentence in federal custody, with the specific correctional facility not publicly disclosed. At number 9 on this countdown is Gina Champion-Cain, a former San Diego power broker whose dramatic fall from grace reshaped how large-scale financial fraud is viewed when led by a woman at the top. Once celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur and civic leader, Champion-Cain is now serving a lengthy federal sentence for orchestrating what prosecutors described as the largest Ponzi scheme in San Diego history and the largest female-run Ponzi scheme ever uncovered in the United States. Born in 1965 in Port Huron, Michigan, Gina Champion-Cain built an academic resume that helped fuel her rise. She earned a double major in philosophy and political science from the University of Michigan in the late 1980s, followed by a master's degree in business administration from the University of San Diego. She later obtained a Juris Doctor degree from California Western School of Law. To many observers, her education signaled discipline, intelligence, and long-term ambition, qualities that would later help her gain the trust of investors, city leaders, and financial institutions. Champion-Cain's early career unfolded in real estate and asset management, where she focused on redeveloping distressed properties. By the mid-1990s, she had launched her own firm and was involved in multi-million-dollar commercial and housing projects. Her portfolio expanded into hospitality, restaurants, vacation rentals, and lifestyle brands. In San Diego, her name became synonymous with urban revitalization. She developed or acquired high-profile projects, mingled with civic leaders, and cultivated a public image of success, innovation, and community impact. Her influence reached a peak in the early 2000s. She explored a run for San Diego mayor, and in 2006, the City Council proclaimed a day in her honor, citing her contributions to local development. To investors, she appeared untouchable, well-connected, legally trained, and deeply embedded in the city's business ecosystem. Behind the scenes, however, federal investigators would later conclude that her empire was already resting on deception. According to court records, between 2012 and 2019, Champion-Cain and her co-conspirators raised more than $400 million from hundreds of investors. She claimed the funds were being used for a liquor license lending program, promising high returns backed by licenses supposedly held safely in escrow. In reality, prosecutors said the program was largely fictional. Investor money was recycled to pay earlier investors, prop up failing businesses, and fund Champion-Cain's personal lifestyle, including luxury homes, cars, jewelry, premium sporting event seats, and a multi-million-dollar salary for herself. When scrutiny intensified in 2019, the scheme began to unravel. The Securities and Exchange Commission and the Federal Bureau of Investigation launched parallel investigations. Evidence presented in court showed attempts to obstruct justice, including shredding documents, deleting emails, and hiding records once authorities closed in. What had once been framed as sophisticated entrepreneurship was now exposed as deliberate, sustained financial fraud on a massive scale. In March 2021, Gina Champion-Cain was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after being convicted of securities fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The court also ordered her to pay tens of millions of dollars in restitution to victims, many of whom had entrusted her with retirement savings, business capital, and life investments. The sentence marked one of the most significant federal punishments ever imposed on a woman for white-collar crime. Champion-Cain is currently serving her sentence at Federal Prison Camp Pekin in Illinois, a minimum security federal facility. Court orders require her to make nominal restitution payments while incarcerated, followed by monthly payments of at least $250 upon release. Her projected release date is January 2033, meaning she will spend well over a decade in federal custody. At number 8 on this list is Ghislaine Maxwell, a name inseparable from one of the most disturbing criminal cases involving power, privilege, and long-term exploitation in modern American history. Once a well-connected international socialite moving easily among political leaders, royalty, and celebrities, Maxwell is now a convicted federal prisoner serving a lengthy sentence for her central role in a trafficking operation linked to financier Jeffrey Epstein. Her case stands out not only for the crimes themselves, but for how long they allegedly remained hidden behind wealth and influence. Born on December 25, 1961, in France, and raised largely in Oxford, England, Ghislaine Maxwell was the youngest child of media tycoon Robert Maxwell. She was educated at elite schools before earning a degree from Balliol College, Oxford. By the late 1980s, she was already a visible figure in London's high society, closely associated with her powerful father and immersed in elite social circles. After her father's death in 1991, she relocated to New York City, where she rebuilt her identity as a prominent socialite and forged deep connections within America's upper social and political spheres. In New York, Maxwell became closely linked to Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier who would later be exposed as a serial offender involved in trafficking girls. Prosecutors would later argue that Maxwell was not a passive companion but an active participant who recruited, groomed, and managed victims for Epstein over a period spanning the mid-1990s. According to testimony and court records, Maxwell helped normalize abuse, maintained control over victims, and ensured Epstein's access to young girls across multiple locations in the United States and abroad. For years, allegations followed both Epstein and Maxwell, surfacing through civil lawsuits and investigative journalism. Multiple women accused Maxwell of targeting them as minors, gaining their trust and preparing them for exploitation. Despite the mounting accusations, Maxwell continued to live freely, often disappearing from public view when legal pressure increased. By the late 2010s, she was rarely photographed, and her whereabouts were frequently unknown, even to courts attempting to serve her with legal documents. Everything changed in July 2020, when the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrested Maxwell at a secluded property in New Hampshire. Federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York charged her with multiple offenses, including trafficking of, conspiracy, and transporting a young individual for illegal sexual activity. She was denied bail after the court cited her international ties, hidden finances, and history of evading legal accountability. From that point forward, Maxwell remained in federal custody as she awaited trial. Her federal trial began in November 2021 and quickly became one of the most closely watched court proceedings in the country. Prosecutors presented testimony from victims who described a structured system of recruitment and grooming, one in which Maxwell played a hands-on role. The jury ultimately convicted her on 5 of 6 counts, finding that she had knowingly participated in the trafficking and abuse of young girls. The verdict sent a clear message that proximity to power would not shield her from accountability. In June 2022, a federal judge sentenced Ghislaine Maxwell to 20 years in federal prison, emphasizing that her punishment was based on her own actions, not merely her association with Epstein. The court highlighted her repeated involvement in exploitation and the long-lasting harm inflicted on victims. Following sentencing, Maxwell was transferred through several federal facilities and is currently incarcerated within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, with a projected release date in July 2037. Number 7 on our list of women sentenced in federal prison is Elizabeth Anne Holmes, a name once celebrated in Silicon Valley and now permanently tied to one of the most high-profile fraud cases in modern American business history. Her story is not one of sudden collapse, but of a long rise built on ambition, influence, and promises that ultimately could not withstand scrutiny. What began as a vision to transform healthcare ended with a federal conviction and a prison sentence measured in years, not headlines. Elizabeth Holmes was born on February 3, 1984 in Washington, D.C., into a family deeply connected to government and corporate America. From an early age, she showed intense drive and a desire to build something extraordinary. While studying chemical engineering at Stanford University, Holmes became convinced she could revolutionize blood testing by using only tiny samples from a finger prick. In 2003, she dropped out of Stanford and founded what would soon become Theranos, a company she claimed would change medicine forever. For years, Theranos thrived on belief. Investors poured in hundreds of millions of dollars, and by 2014 the company was valued at about $9 billion. Holmes became a media sensation, appearing on magazine covers and being praised as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the United States. Powerful figures, including former cabinet members and military leaders, joined Theranos's board, lending the company credibility and influence. To the public, Holmes represented innovation, confidence, and the future of healthcare. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was far different. Employees raised concerns about the accuracy and reliability of Theranos's blood testing technology, but many said they were silenced or pushed out. In 2015, investigative reporting revealed that the company's flagship devices did not work as promised, and that Theranos often relied on traditional machines while claiming proprietary breakthroughs. As regulators and journalists dug deeper, the carefully constructed image of success began to unravel. By 2018, the situation had escalated into a full federal case. Prosecutors alleged that Holmes knowingly misled investors about the capabilities of Theranos technology and the company's financial health. A federal grand jury indicted her on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. Holmes maintained her innocence, arguing that she believed in the technology and was misled by others, including her business partner and former romantic partner, Ramesh Balwani. Her federal trial began in 2021 and quickly became one of the most closely watched courtroom battles in the country. Prosecutors presented evidence showing that Holmes approved misleading demonstrations, exaggerated contracts, and false financial projections. In January 2022, a jury convicted her of defrauding investors while acquitting her on charges related to patients. The verdict marked a dramatic fall for someone once held up as a symbol of American innovation. In November 2022, Holmes was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison and ordered to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution. In May 2023, she reported to federal prison Camp Bryan in Texas, a minimum security federal facility for women. At number 6 in this countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Margaret E. Shafe, a 31-year-old Kansas woman who was sentenced to 293 months in federal prison, or roughly 24 years and 5 months, for the murder of her husband, U.S. Army soldier Greg Shafe. The fatal incident occurred at their home on the Fort Riley military installation in February 2024. and the case drew national attention due to the presence of the couple's 2 young daughters during the murder. On February 14, 2025, a federal jury found Shafe guilty of second-degree murder following testimony and evidence presented over the course of the trial. According to investigators, the murder was preceded by threats from Shafe just minutes before the shooting. She reportedly told her husband, "I am going to make him feel my pain, and he just laughs at me." Roughly 20 minutes later, Shafe obtained her husband's firearm and went to the second floor of their home, waiting for him to reach the landing. When he did, she fired, hitting him in the face while he was holding their 11-month-old child. He fell into the bathroom, where the 9-year-old stepdaughter was brushing her hair, witnessing the attack. The 9-year-old daughter's testimony played a crucial role in securing a conviction. She screamed and hid in the shower, then grabbed her younger sister and called for help. Emergency services arrived promptly, and neither child sustained physical injuries. Following the murder, Shafe took her daughters, left the home while intoxicated, and drove off the military base. Authorities apprehended her a few hours later, and during her detention, she reportedly bragged about the murdering, even holding a mock birthday party for her deceased husband with paper confetti. Prosecutors emphasized Shafe's lack of remorse, describing her actions as the culmination of years of physical and emotional abuse directed at her husband. While intoxicated, she would belittle and control him, threaten to leave with their children, and engage in behavior that escalated tension within the household. The jury heard these patterns during the trial, alongside Shafe's attempts to cast her husband in a negative light by alleging inappropriate behavior, which authorities determined were false and part of her effort to justify the murder. The investigation was conducted jointly by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Department of Army Criminal Investigation Division, and Fort Riley Fire and Emergency Services, U.S. Attorney Ryan A. Kriegshauser stated that the evidence demonstrated Shafe murdered her husband while their children were in the home. He praised the bravery of her 9-year-old daughter for testifying against her mother, saying her testimony helped the court understand the full circumstances of the murder. Shafe's conduct, prosecutors noted, showed a clear disregard for life and a willingness to harm her family to satisfy her own anger. As of January 3, 2026, Margaret Shafe is currently serving her sentence in federal prison with no parole eligibility due to the severity of her crime. Number 5 on our list of women sentenced in federal prison is Rebecca Diane Merkel, a 43-year-old woman whose federal conviction in East Texas drew widespread attention because of the scale of her operation and its fatal outcome. Prosecutors described her case as a clear example of how large-scale illegal substance distribution at the local level can lead to devastating consequences. Rebecca Diane Merkel was sentenced in November 2024 to 20 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute fentanyl. The case was prosecuted by the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Texas. Federal authorities confirmed that her criminal activity was directly connected to a fatal overdose, a factor that weighed heavily during sentencing. According to court records, Merkel operated a large illegal substance distribution ring from her residence on William Street in Longview, Texas. Among users in the area, the location was infamously referred to as the Walmart of illegal substances, a nickname reflecting the wide range of illegal items allegedly sold there. Prosecutors stated that methamphetamine, fentanyl-laced pills, stolen goods, and firearms were distributed from the home, with customers including individual users and street-level dealers across multiple counties. The most serious event connected to the case occurred on March 29, 2023, when Merkel sold pills later linked to a fatal overdose. The following day, law enforcement officers discovered the victim's body inside a vehicle in a remote area of Rusk County. Investigators determined the scene had been deliberately staged by co-defendants in an attempt to avoid detection. An autopsy later confirmed that the victim's demise was caused by a fentanyl overdose, solidifying the federal case against those involved. Merkel was arrested again on May 10, 2023, during a traffic stop that further strengthened the prosecution's case. Officers recovered a firearm, methamphetamine, and pills containing fentanyl. During the investigation, Merkel admitted to selling controlled substances from her residence, including during the period when the fatal pills were distributed. Her admissions, combined with physical evidence and witness testimony, played a central role in her guilty plea. 6 co-defendants were also sentenced for their involvement in the conspiracy, receiving federal prison terms ranging from just over 3 years to nearly 16 years. Number 4 on our list is Nicole Devilbiss, a 35-year-old woman from Jacksonville, Florida, whose federal conviction drew nationwide attention due to the shocking nature of her crimes. Devilbiss was sentenced on June 18, 2024 to 4 years and 3 months in federal prison for her role in a conspiracy to create and distribute Animal Crush videos involving monkeys. The sentence was handed down by U.S. District Judge Wendy W. Berger following Devilbiss's guilty plea in February 2024. Federal authorities revealed that Devilbiss acted as an administrator of a Telegram group chat devoted to the abuse, torture, and death of monkeys. She facilitated the funding and distribution of videos depicting severe animal cruelty. Investigators discovered multiple videos of monkey torture on her electronic devices, along with a journal detailing her intent to acquire a monkey locally for abuse. These findings indicated her active participation in the production and dissemination of such content. The criminal investigation involved multiple law enforcement agencies, including Homeland Security Investigations, the Clay County Sheriff's Office, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. Authorities emphasized that the case represented a coordinated multi-agency effort to dismantle a network engaged in serious violations of federal law. The charges fell under the Animal Crush Video Prohibition Act and the Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Pact Act, which criminalized the creation, sale, and distribution of videos depicting the torture of animals. Devilbiss had been in federal custody since her arrest on October 31, 2023, when investigators executed a search warrant at her home on Old Kings Road South in Jacksonville. During interviews, she admitted to participating in multiple group chats dedicated to monkey abuse and torture. Court documents revealed that she became an administrator for one group from June 23, 2022 through May 23, 2023, coordinating payments ranging from $100 to $230 per video to fund the production of Animal Crush content. Investigators also reported that Devilbiss had initially joined the group claiming she wanted to help stop the torture of monkeys, but she later admitted to deriving relief from viewing the videos herself. Messages obtained from her accounts showed she referred to the abused monkeys as rats and actively commented on and shared dozens of videos depicting the animals being tortured. Financial records confirmed multiple transactions from her online payment accounts starting in April 2022, used to support the creation of these videos. Number 3 on our list of women sentenced in federal prison is Bridget Lydell Biggam, a 36-year-old woman from Appling, Georgia, whose federal conviction highlighted the dangers of large-scale harmful substance distribution. Biggam was sentenced on October 21, 2020, to 98 months in federal prison, approximately 8 years and 2 months for her role in a methamphetamine trafficking conspiracy in the Augusta area. Alongside her prison term, she was fined $1,500 and ordered to serve 3 years of supervised release following her incarceration. The investigation into Biggam's activities was conducted by the Illegal Substance Enforcement Administration and the Richmond County Sheriff's Office. Authorities revealed that she was part of a multi-person conspiracy that distributed substantial quantities of methamphetamine in the region. Law enforcement seized large amounts of methamphetamine, 15 firearms, and over $44,000 in cash, all linked to the operation. Her co-defendants were also charged, reflecting the extensive scope of the criminal network. Court records indicate that the conspiracy dated back at least to February 2018, with Biggam and her co-conspirators coordinating sales throughout Augusta and surrounding communities. Investigators found that the group sold substances from various locations, including a motel room, facilitating distribution to both individual users and local dealers. The scheme represented a significant public safety threat, prompting federal authorities to pursue strong penalties. Biggam's co-defendants included Bjorn Michael Wiley, who received 168 months in federal prison, and John Tillman Durst, who was sentenced to time served. 2 other co-defendants, Christopher Allen Marshall and Durst, faced ongoing charges, including possession of firearms in furtherance of illegal substance trafficking. The collective sentences underscored the federal government's commitment to dismantling organized illegal substance networks. As of the latest available information, Bridget Lydell Biggam is currently serving her sentence in the federal prison system. Number 2. Priscilla Ann Ellis. Number 2 on our list of women sentenced in federal prison is Priscilla Ann Ellis, a former Texas resident whose federal convictions spanned both large-scale international fraud and a shocking murder-for-hire plot. Ellis, now 51 years old, was sentenced to a total of 125 years in federal prison, with her sentences running consecutively. Her criminal record, prosecutors noted, marks her as a rare defendant who will pose an acute danger to society for as long as she walks this earth. She is currently serving her sentence at the Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas. Ellis's first federal conviction stemmed from a massive money laundering and fraud scheme. In October 27, 2016, a federal jury found her guilty of conspiracy to commit international money laundering and conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud. The operation involved defrauding law firms, title companies, and individuals through counterfeit checks and fictitious online relationships, with funds laundered through shell companies and bank accounts controlled by Ellis and her co-conspirators. On October 13, 2017, she was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, ordered to pay over $9 million in restitution, and to forfeit multiple assets including bank accounts, real estate, and a luxury vehicle. While awaiting sentencing for her fraud conviction at the Pinellas County Jail, Ellis orchestrated a murder-for-hire plot targeting witnesses and the mother of a cooperating witness. She enlisted other inmates and even directed her daughter to deliver $18,000 in cash to an undercover FBI agent posing as a hitman, with $1,600 designated as a down payment. Court records revealed that she planned executions so extreme that the scheme included harming children if necessary and using a Colombian necktie as a method of killing. Ellis was convicted of the murder-for-hire plot on March 9, 2017. On January 4, 2018, U.S. District Judge James S. Moody sentenced her to 65 years in federal prison to run consecutively to her prior 40-year sentence for fraud. This brought her total federal sentence to 105 years, ensuring that Ellis would spend the remainder of her life behind bars for her crimes. Throughout her incarceration, Ellis has pursued multiple appeals through the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, with filings in 2019, 2020, 2023, and 2024. As of January 26, no final ruling has been issued on her most recent appeal, and her case remains active in the appellate process. Her earlier petition for transfer to a prison closer to family under the First Step Act was dismissed as moot after her relocation to FMC Carswell. Number 1. Rheta Phyllis Mays. At number 1 in this countdown of women sentenced in federal prison is Rheta Phyllis Mays, born June 16, 1975, became one of the most notorious female serial offenders in United States history due to her actions at the Louis A. Johnson Veterans Medical Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Over an 11-month period, from July 2017 to June 2018, Mays murdered at least 7 elderly military veterans by injecting them with lethal doses of insulin while working as a nursing assistant. Her crimes shocked the local community and the nation, prompting federal investigations and ultimately leading to her sentencing on May 11, 2021. Mays grew up in Reynoldsville, West Virginia, and served in the United States Army West Virginia National Guard, including deployments to Iraq and Kuwait with the 1092nd Engineer Battalion. Before her employment at the Veterans Medical Center, she worked as a corrections officer at the North Central Regional Jail in Greenwood, West Virginia, from 2005 to 2012. During that time, she was named in a lawsuit by an inmate alleging abuse, though the case was dismissed. Mays was also an active member of Monroe Chapel United Methodist Church near Clarksburg, reflecting her deep community ties prior to her crimes. Her criminal actions began in earnest when she was assigned overnight shifts in July 2017 on Ward 3A at the Veterans Medical Center. Patients began experiencing acute and unexplained drops in blood sugar, many of whom were not insulin dependent. Over the following 11 months, hospital staff documented multiple hypoglycemic events, and Demise S, eventually connecting them to Mays's deliberate administration of insulin. One early victim, Archie Edgell, an 84-year-old Korean War veteran, suffered repeated severe drops in blood sugar and died after multiple insulin injections. An autopsy later confirmed he had been injected 4 times. Investigators launched an extensive 2-year inquiry after May's termination in June 2018. The investigation included over 300 interviews, exhumation of suspicious deaths, review of medical and hospital records, and forensic analysis of digital evidence, including internet searches and phone communications. Investigators noted May's fascination with female serial offenders and her viewing of Netflix content related to insulin murders. Calls to her incarcerated husband revealed her expressing frustration and violent thoughts about patients. By autumn 2019, authorities had identified Mays as a person of interest, though she remained free until her arrest. In July 2020, Mays was formally charged with the murders of 8 patients, though charges were later reduced to 7 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of assault with intent to commit murder. On July 14, 2020, she pleaded guilty in the United States District Court for the Northern District of West Virginia in Clarksburg, admitting to all charges. During her plea, she wept openly and claimed her actions were motivated by stress and a desire to relieve suffering, though prosecutors emphasized the premeditated nature of her crimes. She remained in custody at the West Virginia Regional Jail and Correctional Facility until sentencing. On May 11, 2021, Mays was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Thomas Klee to 7 consecutive life sentences plus 20 years, without eligibility for parole. The judge described her as the worst kind of individual, invisible until it is too late, reflecting the calculated and undetected nature of her crimes. Mays was later transferred in July 2021 to the low-security Federal Correctional Institution, Aliceville, in Alabama. Thank you for watching. Check out these other interesting clips from the channel, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.